This is the Honey Armoured Troop box set from Battlefront. The M3 Stuart Honey light tank played a significant role in British desert forces. Despite being a light tank, the Honey was a match for many tanks in North Africa. Its mobility also made it a good scout tank, and Honeys were the eyes and ears of British armoured formations. If we look at the back of the box, there's an exploded assembly diagram and a full-size picture of the completed M3 tank. The kit has a moderate number of parts, coming in at 13 parts for the basic tank. Each box has 5 plastic M3 Honey tanks, 1 tank commander sprue, 1 decal sheet, and 4 unit cards. The tank commanders are hard plastic figures, not the flexible ABS plastic. So let's have a look at the sprues. Each M3 tank comes on a single sprue of yellow plastic. The first thing you'll notice is 2 turrets and 2 hull options. This one sprue is designed so you can build US and UK versions of the tank. As far as I can tell from research images, the desert version of the hull is the one with the added stowage box across the engine deck and a set of jerry cans near the right exhaust. The other one is for Lend-Lease UK and US forces. The turrets here include the octagonal style with hexagonal cupola common to UK tanks. The smooth-sided horseshoe turret is more common with US forces. Both turrets include an open and closed cupola option. There are also 2 options for driver doors and hatches on the hull. One is flatter while the other has up-armoured vision slit covers. Again, the flatter version is more common on British Desert Honeys, while the up-armoured doors are more common on Lend-Lease and later US tanks, but there was a lot of variation. Tracks are single pieces with good track detail. Hull and track pieces are keyed to guide these during assembly. The parts also include British pattern desert sand shields, a variety of stowage options including added fuel tanks, and 2 30 caliber machine guns. The external fuel tank positioning took some research, but these were normally mounted on the upper hull to either side of and just behind the turret. Main armament includes the M5 37mm gun. In later versions this was replaced with the longer M6 37mm gun, but this option isn't on the sprue. There is a very short gun, possibly a short barrel 37mm support weapon, but I haven't been able to identify it. So having 2 main guns and 2 30 calibers supplied means you have all the parts you need to build 2 complete turrets for each tank in this kit. However, one of the turrets will be armed with the short unidentified gun. Here's the decal sheet. These are British markings and there are enough decals here for the 5 tanks. The Divisional Insignia include the red jerboa symbol of the Desert Rats 7th Armoured Division and the white rhino of the British 1st Armoured Division. The red 40 is an Armoured Regiment Arm of Service flash, while the red squares are squadron markings indicating B Squadron. Generally the Arm of Service and divisional signs go on the fenders, while the squadron marks appear on the turret. The crew sprue is hard plastic with 4 chest-high commander figures and 2 heads. Detail on these is good. So let's have a look at the finished product. The sprues in this kit are packed with options, and enough parts for 2 turrets for each tank. You can build the British Honey, or the early US and Lend-Lease M3 Stuart. Parts are sharp and well cast with no flash or other issues. Detail is good with extra stowage and fuel tanks included. Bolt detail is a bit heroic and oversized, but stands out well. Overall, this is a lovely little kit of an important British desert tank. The M3 was developed from the 1930s era M2A4 light tank. This M2A4 shows the similarity to the M3 in overall layout, but a notable difference is the suspension, where the rear idler wheel is raised. In the M3, the idler was enlarged and lowered to a trailing position. This increased the length of track in contact with the ground. The M3 Stuart was a light tank weighing about 15 tons. The main armament was a 37mm gun, initially the M5 but later the slightly longer M6 version. US tank designers loved machine guns, so as well as the coaxial and hull-mounted 30 caliber machine guns, the M3 had fixed machine guns mounted in the left and right hull sponsons. An additional 30 caliber machine gun was in an anti-aircraft mount on the top of the turret. In practice, the sponson guns were removed and the mountings plated over. In later versions they were removed entirely. The M3 was a tall tank with a high silhouette, a design feature necessitated by the initial use of a radial aircraft engine as a power pack. A radial engine also meant the drive shaft was mounted high and ran through the fighting compartment to get to the transmission at the front. A number of power plants were actually used during M3 production, including petrol and diesel engines. The internal layout was poor and the fighting compartment was cramped. The British made several internal modifications, including moving the manual turret traverse controls to allow the gunner to turn the turret rather than the commander. The commander was also expected to act as loader for the main gun. Some British crews tried to add a loader to the turret, a difficult prospect in an already cramped environment. Despite these technical shortcomings, the M3 Stuart was agile, fast and mechanically reliable. These were the attributes that led the British to nickname the tank Honey. However, one of the limitations of this tank was a modest range of only about 75 miles cross-country. This was a significant issue in the desert battles when fighting units often outran their support and supplies were scarce. British forces used the M3 in combat from November 1941. Initial poor results and high losses of M3s were more to do with poor tactics than any limitation of the tank itself. In fact, despite being a light tank, the Honey was in many ways a superior vehicle to the British-designed Crusader. It was lighter, faster, more reliable, and had similar armour protection and main armament. The M3 was also a match for most opponents at that time. It was superior to Italian armour and generally comparable in protection and firepower to the German Panzer III, the main Axis tank at that point in the Desert War. However, from 1942, as German tanks became more capable, the nimble M3s were used more in a scouting and reconnaissance role than in tank versus tank engagements. Some tanks used in this role had their turrets removed to reduce the silhouette and reduce weight. The M3 remained in this role throughout the Desert Campaign, into Tunisia, Italy, and even the Northwest European theatre. Later production M3s had a redesigned hull, featuring sloped front armour instead of the stepped plate, and driver's hatches repositioned to the top of the hull. Similar features were used on the M5 Stuart, an updated version of the M3 using twin Cadillac diesel engines. This version, known as the Stuart 6 in British service, can be identified by the raised engine deck and vertical side armour. Other major users of the M3 were the Russians, who felt the M3 was undergunned and under-armoured. Combined with the narrow tracks, limited range and requirement for high-octane petrol, the M3 was not popular. M3s also served in the Pacific and Far East with US, British and Australian forces. But the real claim to fame for the M3 Stuart was in the desert, where it earned the name Honey. Let's look at using the M3 in the desert in 4th edition Flames of War. Here's the unit card for the Honey armoured troop. It's a tank unit. The Honey's crews are aggressive, so they take risks and are hit on a 3+. They're confident troops, so their motivation is a 4+. But the seasoned desert veterans are also unwilling to push their luck, so their last stand is 5+. They'll cut and run under pressure. They are trained, so their skill rating is 4+. However, they still tend to charge into contact, so their tactics skill is 5+. Armour protection is a bit limited, with front 3, side 2 and top armour of 1. This was a bit of a surprise to me, as some sources talk about the protection being similar to early Panzer III's, but their rating of 3 is the equivalent of the Crusader's front armour. Tactical move is 12 inches or 30 centimetres, terrain dash is 16 inches or 40 centimetres, cross-country dash is 24 inches or 60 centimetres, and road dash is 28 inches or 70 centimetres. This is faster than most tanks in the desert, including the M3 Grant and Panzer III and IV. The Crusader has a slightly faster tactical speed at 14 inches, but then the advantage passes to the Honey with faster dash speeds. This means the Crusader can move further and still shoot, but the M3 Honeys can move quickly across the table to rush for an objective or outflank the enemy. Cross is a 3+. The 37mm main gun has a range of 24 inches or 60 centimetres, a halted rate of fire of 2 and a moving of 1. Anti-tank is 7, which while okay for the period is proving to be a bit marginal against the front armour of most panzers. Look at using the superior mobility of the Honey to try for flank shots here. Firepower is 4+ and the gun has the no HE rule, which means a +1 penalty to hit when targeting infantry or gun teams. The Honey's machine guns have a standard 16-inch range with a rate of fire of 5, anti-tank of 2 and a firepower of 6. They do have the self-defense AA rule, which means the commander's MG can fire at aircraft with a rate of fire of 1. This at least gives the M3 some capability to fend off enemy air attack. An armoured troop of 3 Honeys is 5 points, so they're a cheap option for British players. Expect to see quite a few of these on the tabletop. The key in getting the best out of these will be to use their numbers, speed and manoeuvrability to outflank and hit, or even avoid the enemy rather than going head-to-head with German armour. So that's the new plastic M3 Honey Stuart from Battlefront. A great little kit of this iconic desert tank, with plenty of options and stowage on the sprue. There is some simplification of the mould around the smoke discharges and under the hull MG barrel. This is probably to keep the number of parts in the build down. Again, detail is sharp and this is a well-detailed kit. Fit of parts is good, and while the gun barrel is slightly overscale, as is the current Battlefront trend, this kit really looks the part. I expect we'll see a lot of these with British players in the future.